Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at a game that I just played where I was able to beat a grandmaster at chess. The highest rating chess, the highest level of chess. You need 2,500 FIDE with 3 grandmaster norms to get it, and I mean this is kind of incredible for me. I haven't really played many grandmasters. I think I've played like 3 ever. So this is kind of crazy, and yeah, let's just get into the chess. So my opponent immediately starts off the game with pawn to e4, one of the most natural moves of the game, and I'm already thinking, okay, my opponent's a very, very strong player. I need to do something kind of crazy. I need to play something a little bit combative here because my opponent, while he is a grandmaster, being 2,300 as he is probably a little bit older and a little bit less in his prime. So I'm like, okay, how do I make it the most tactical possible? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to play the move pawn to c5. I'm going to play the Sicilian defense, and we're going to get into something very scary for him. Knight to f3, I go pawn to d6, pawn to d4, c takes d4, and knight takes d4. Here is a very instructive position. I have to play the move knight to f6. The point of this is that I'm forcing the move knight to c3, which my opponent plays. If I don't play this move, if I just play what I normally play in these lines, which I'm going for a dragon here, I would be playing the move pawn to g6, then my opponent has the extra benefit of playing this move pawn to c4. And these Maraxi bind lines, where white get these pawns on e4 and c4, are very, very difficult for black to play. And I really, really don't like them, so I like to avoid them with this move knight to f6. Knight to c3, pawn to g6, bishop to c4, and bishop to g7. And I'm hoping that my opponent is going to go for a more combative line with a move like bishop to e3, f3, queen d2, and long castles. But of course, my opponent, not really wanting to get into some complications here, doesn't let me have any fun and instead plays the much more boring line, the much more positional line, short castles. And here we have the game. This is our position that we have to work with. Of course, we're going to be playing a couple more moves of theory, such as short castles, rook to e1, all very natural things, and knight to c6 is the last book move for either side. And I think my opponent thought that he was still in theory here, or maybe he didn't, but I think he thought that he was still in theory here. And he plays this very, very interesting move, a move that you see a lot in some Dutch positions. He plays the move bishop to g5. And this is my first think of the game. Bishop to g5 is honestly a little bit wrong, I think. I don't think it's a very good move. And the point is that this knight on f6 would love to be on this square. Would love to be on e5. The knight would love to be on e5 here. But if I try to put the knight on e5, I play a move like knight d7. My opponent can play f4, disallowing me from doing that. Of course, not here since the knight would be hanging. But there's some lines where he can do that, and the tempo that I have is very, very important here. I have to do everything very, very quickly. So I decided, okay, the reason why this move is wrong, the reason why this bishop g5 is wrong, is because it allows me to put the knight on this square much quicker with the very, very nice knight takes d4. And the point is that after queen takes d4, now I play the move knight to g4, queen back to d2, and I simply place the knight right on the e5 square, which is exactly where it needs to be, hitting the bishop and getting a very, very nice outpost. Technically, outpost is still in my territory, but a very, very nice square for my knight, where it's going to be doing a lot more work. However, this isn't even the best move. I could, as you can see, it's an inaccuracy from the computer. I could even play this very, very interesting move, pawn to h6. And the point is that wherever the bishop, if the bishop goes to f4, I'm going to play pawn to g5, bishop to g3, and then I'm going to put the knight on e5. And the difference here is that my opponent can't really play this move pawn to f4 as easily. Well, of course, the bishop hangs, so of course bishop b3 first. And, oh yeah, and it's just entirely about like removing my opponent's pawn break. So I go with knight to g6. And this is where I want my knight in the end. This is what the computer thinks I want my knight at. Because if you play pawn to f4 here, which is white's normal attempt at continuing the attack, you just don't have enough firepower. G takes f4, bishop takes f4, takes. Sees that even though I have kind of awkward pawns, like this pawn is a little bit loose, my king's slightly open, you'll see that black is significantly better because black has the bishop pair. White's knight isn't really going to be doing anything in the short term or in the long term. and I can already kind of do whatever you want, whatever I want. My opponent doesn't really have an attack. Like, this is what my opponent needs to do to get an attack. Not to that square. To this square that I'm highlighting. This is kind of what my opponent needs to do to get an attack, and the bishop defends that square. So that's really awkward. If you ever go for this line, I can even play like pawn to e6, like block out this bishop queen f6 ideas. Like there's so many easy ways for black to defend the king that this isn't worrying me like at all. This isn't scary at all. So that's what the computer says, which is kind of interesting. I just went with the normal move knight d5, which seemed like what I wanted to do. It just puts the knight on a nice square, and my opponent decides to go with bishop to b3, simply moving the bishop out of danger, and I play rook to e8 after some thought, basically just saying that my opponent wants bishop to h6, and if he plays bishop to h6 now, I'm probably just going to play bishop to g7, and my rook isn't going to be hanging over here. Maybe I won't do that. Maybe I'll play something else, but I think that, did I say h7? Bishop to h8, and my rook is not going to be hanging on the f8 square, and life is going to be good. My opponent doesn't do that, though. My opponent goes with a very normal move, knight to d5, putting some pressure down here, just getting the knight to a good square. I can't play pawn to e6 because my queen is hanging. And now it's kind of the time to get black a plan, because at the moment it's a little bit tricky for black to get everything done. Like, black kind of all has all the pieces where they want to be. Of course, we could get some extra things, like this bishop isn't really doing too much. Like, I want to make this bishop do something, and I want to get my rook into the game. So I'm like, okay, what's the best way to do both those things? What's the best way to do both those things and create a plan for the long term? And I thought that the best move by far was to play the move bishop to e6. And the point of this move is actually kind of crazy. The point is that obviously it looks a little weird. It looks a little weird. My bishop is in front of the pawns, and that's kind of something that you don't want to really do too much. Like, you're taught as a beginner that you don't really want to put your bishops in front of the pawns. You want to be able to push your pawns. But this is actually a very, very natural move from these lines. This is just what you normally do. And also the point that I have here is kind of interesting too. My idea with this move is that I kind of want to take this knight. I kind of want to take this knight and play queen to b6. And I'm eyeing this pawn on b2. I'm eyeing this pawn on f2. I want this line for my rook. And I think that it's going to be very, very nice for me if I can get that, because I can immediately play this move pawn to e6. All my pieces get active. I have no bad pieces anymore after that line. And my knight can even go to this move, to the c4 square, and start putting pressure down here. So I was really, really happy with this bishop to e6. And I think that my opponent really made a mistake with his next move. The computer doesn't think so, but I think my opponent really made a mistake with his next move, because it gives black just a very, very easy plan. My opponent plays the move f4 after like a minute of thought. And my idea here, I think this makes my idea a lot stronger. Because remember, I want to play this move queen to b6, and now it's going to be a check. And now there's even going to be like threats with that move. So I play the move knight to g4, and already there's some crazy complications. Like, I'm going to be playing takes, queen b6, king f1, check here, and start windmilling. And it's going to get really, really bad for my opponent. It's going to get really, really bad. So I'm looking at this position. I'm really, really happy for this. I'm like, okay, am I better against a grandmaster? That's kind of cool. Let's keep that going. My opponent ends up playing the move rook e2, which is very logical. He's just trying to make sure that there's no knight f2 mumbo jumbo, which is probably what he has to play. I think if he doesn't play this move, I think black is already doing really, really well. And now I simply go with my idea. Bishop takes d5. Bishop takes d5, and simply I go queen to b6, which is exactly where all my pieces want to be. My queen is on b6, my bishop is on g7. My knight is actually pretty good on the g4 square. It can always come back here if it needs to, but it's really doing a really good job of blocking these blocks for my opponent. And after king h1, my rook is the only piece that doesn't really have a square in the game yet, but it's going to come to c8 and it's going to be very powerful, so I'm not worried about that. After king to h1, I'm like, that's just a free pawn on b2, and I just decide, okay, we take it. Queen takes b2. and black is just up a pawn. However, the position is only minus 0.3, which is a little wild. Minus 0.3 for a full pawn is kind of crazy, but if you actually take stock of the position, it makes a lot of sense because my opponent goes rook f1, and the attack coming down at my king is going to be very, very quick and very, very scary, and I already have to start making concessions to my opponent. Like, if I play the move e6, which seems very natural, just kicking the bishop out, already there's bishop to b3, and I've lost all of my advantage. All of my advantage is immediately gone. Like, I go rook a c8, play some normal moves. My opponent takes on d6 here. I mean, I'm hanging pawns all over the place. Let's say not rook a c8. Let's say then I play queen d4. Queen d4 here. I mean, it looks like I'm doing some good things, but h3 happens. If I go with this move, I think I'm already, like, doing very poorly. I think there's, like, e5 here, and it's really, really scary. Like, I'm going to lose the d6 pawn. I have to play this move knight h5. He doesn't even take. Like, I'm just going off engine lines right now. I'm not, like, actually looking at this. He doesn't even take. He goes, like, rook f3. And, I mean, this isn't really what we want. This isn't really what we want. At the bare minimum, this was a draw because he has the bishop pair, and that kind of cancels out the extra pawn. But, like, look at this position. Like, I feel like my pieces are just so poorly placed. Like, this knight has to take a couple moves to get back into the game. Maybe black is pushing, but it feels like white is the one doing well. Instead here of playing these lines, instead here of playing this, like, e6 move, which is probably better than the move I played, I end up thinking for a while, and I play the move rook a to c8, which seemed natural, and the point is that I'm just going to put pressure on this pawn and make it difficult for my opponent to really start an attack by moving the pieces, since you're going to lose some material over on the queen side. But this doesn't really help. This move rook a c8 is kind of like a nothing move. It doesn't really do anything to my position, doesn't really help me at all, and my opponent simply goes f5, and it's already just very, very difficult for black to defend, and I'm already on, like, oh my god, I gotta be super accurate. I gotta be incredibly accurate in order to defend this position. I have to make sure that all my moves are, like, the top 1 or 2 engine moves, and this is going to be very, very difficult. I think for a long time here, I think for like a minute here, and I play the move knight to e5. Yeah, I played the move knight to e5, and my idea is I'm simply going to defend the pawn like this with the knight, and maybe I'm going to be able to get e6 off in the future. I don't really know. It seems really, really scary. Like, e6 now I considered, but I thought this was a little bit weakening. Like, my opponent can take and, like, open up like this. Obviously not here because this, but, like, in the future maybe h3 and then this. And I'm just very, very scared. I'm very, very scared out of this position. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go knight e5. Now there's no h3. My knight is well placed in the center. Life is good. I'm gonna try and trade the queens, and it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be difficult. Yeah, sure. But I think that I'm gonna be able to survive in the end. F takes g6. H takes g6. Obviously my idea. My opponent plays the move queen to f4, which the computer gives as a mistake, but it's almost the top engine move. And here I have to find the move pawn to e6, kicking out the bishop, making sure that there's no problems here because the knight defends here, and I can actually defend like this in some lines. I find the move e6. Only move in the position. Only move in the position. Everything else is like +1. e6. Bishop back to b3. And okay, I play an interesting move. I play queen to c3. This is fine. This still keeps the advantage. There's some ideas here. Like, I want to go with this move queen c7 and defend everything. Or maybe I want to do something else. Maybe I want to... I don't know. I just think getting my queen back into the game is pretty darn necessary. The best move here is queen d4, I believe, which I don't really understand because the queen isn't coming back to defend the king now. Like, I don't really get this move. The point of this is to come down here. I don't think queen d4 is very human, but queen to c3 made sense to me. My opponent goes rook e3, and now there are 2 moves that end up drawing the game. There are 2 moves that end up, like, keeping the position equal. One that gives black a slight advantage, and one that makes it equal. The moves here, actually, there's a few that make it equal, but they're really difficult, and I don't understand them all. Like, this is a move. I don't understand queen d4. I don't get this move. It doesn't make much sense. There's queen b4. Again, I don't really understand. Maybe the point is that, like, I'm targeting the back rank, so my opponent can't really get his rooks into the game. But I'm really not sure. Like, this doesn't seem correct. Maybe it is. Maybe it's totally fine. Maybe this is exactly what I need to do. I don't really know. And there's also this move, queen a5. Yeah, I guess the point is that I'm targeting the back rank, so my opponent has difficulties bringing his rooks into the game. But that's a little bit difficult. The move that really is good for black here, the only move that is good, is queen d2. And this move was a little bit tricky to find. This move was pretty difficult. I don't find this move. I play queen c7, I lose all my advantage. I'm just completely lost. Queen d2 happens, and the point is that my opponent can't really kick out my queen like at all. Like, if he tries, I just go check here and queen g4, and now there's a queen trade, and black just wins immediately. And if you can't kick out my queen, then you can't move your rook because of this pin, and black is just better. Black is just like, from like a human standpoint, black is just almost winning in this position, I think. But alas, I didn't find queen d2. It's rare to have this like counter pin on the other side of the board. This crazy idea. There's like queen h4 here anyway. Like there's some crazy lines where white is just like almost winning. Like, this is a threat now, opening up an attack on the queen and an attack down here and an attack down here. It's kind of a wild position. But okay, queen c7, I'm completely lost, and my opponent goes rook h3, and now this is panic mode. I know I'm losing. I know it's over. I know I've probably lost. I've messed it up. I'm a failure. So many different things. I was better against the Grandmaster. Now I'm throwing it all away. Oh my goodness. Why did I do this? But I keep my cool together, and I try to hunker down and find the best move. My opponent is threatening some crazy things. I think my opponent is threatening bishop to f6 and rook to h8 ideas. And after here, you play a move like this. And it's just kind of, and black just loses. Black just loses in many of these lines, because there's so much pressure on the king. You just kind of get checkmated here. It isn't really what we want. It's not really what we want. He also wants to take the knight in some cases, because the knight is one of the only pieces defending this, and he also wants to open up the bishop. It's just kind of a madhouse, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to block all of this? F5 comes to mind immediately. But after F5, I immediately see, okay, my opponent takes the pawn, I recapture, and he simply plays queen takes F5 because this bishop pins the pawn to my king. So that can't work. F5 doesn't work. I would just be losing there. So what's another way that I could make this work? I am up a pawn at the moment. I could probably sacrifice a pawn and be okay. And I find this move, I think this is probably one of the best moves in the position, probably the best move in the position. I know the engine doesn't say it, but this is practically, I think, is the way to go. Pawn to f6. And this is very strong, I think. I think this move is very, very strong. Because if my opponent goes queen to h4, which is the top engine line, you have to be pretty sure. Like, you're not blundering anything. Like, I can probably play like knight f7, for example. Black still hunkers down. It's probably mate in a couple moves, but you have to be precise, and that's the point. So, okay, it's a little bit difficult. And if you play the natural move, bishop takes f6, which is what my opponent plays in the game, I think for a while, and I ended up playing this move, queen f7. But now I'm down to 59 seconds on the clock versus 2 minutes 30, and I'm now down a piece against the Grandmaster. And, I mean, if he could beat me normally, he could probably also beat me down a piece. So this is a little bit scary. He also has triple my time, but I'm going to try and fight on. Not every day that you get to play as GM. I end up playing this move, pawn to a5. And the point is, I'm trying to create counterplay on the queen side. I'm trying to use my last couple pawns to do something over here. I'm going to go b5 and I'm going to go a4. I'm going to try to do something like that. And if my opponent is stupid, his bishop gets trapped, right? So I gotta go for that. My opponent goes pawn to a4, and I decide, okay, now that my opponent's pawn is on a4, I can defend this pawn on d6 easily. I go rook to c6. The point is that now there's not this, which would skewer the two rooks, and I'm simply defending the pawn. My opponent should probably just play rook to d3 and just like pick up the pawn. Sure, like I can hold on to it. Like I can play this move bishop f8, but my position is very, very weak. It's not a good position. It's really, really not a good position. My opponent has more than a piece here, which is not what you want. My opponent also has these two pawns, which will eventually march on the board and win the game. So bishop to back to e3, and now I'm realizing, okay, I have to start playing faster. I have 47 seconds on the clock. Not enough time at all, but okay, let's try and make this work. I go pawn to b6 after a while. Simple pawn to b6. I'm just solidifying this, not allowing this bishop to come in. Normal move. Rook h to f3. I'm like, okay, he wants rook f7. There, you don't get rook f7. Rook e7. My opponent goes rook f6. And I'm like, wait a second. Wait a second. My opponent's giving me a rook. But obviously he has an idea for it, and he thinks that he's getting into a winning endgame, which he is. Bishop takes f6, rook takes f6, and king to g7, and I think my opponent thought that he could win this pawn here. But actually, in the end, that line is not that easy. Like if we look at this line, it takes rook e6, bishop e6, rook c2. Like, my opponent has back rank problems. Sure, like, you can't even take this pawn. Like, you take this pawn, I think there's... I guess there's not this, because you can defend with the bishop. But actually, I just get closer with my king, and this is, like, becomes pretty dry pretty quickly. It's actually a little bit awkward for my opponent to make the best moves here. And nothing is obvious. Nothing is obvious here. So my opponent thinks for a while, and actually goes back to f2. Which is an interesting move, simply deciding to defend the pawn on c2. I assume that he missed that after bishop to b6 in that line, he had the move bishop to g1 after this check, which looks like back rank mate. But it's all right. He has low time. I have low time. We're gonna be making some mistakes. I go pawn to d5 after a while, and the point is that okay, if you take, I'm gonna open up some attack on the bishop. There's gonna be some problems. My opponent goes bishop to d4 check. I end up playing the move pawn to e5, which seems pretty natural. And if you go back, I'm just going to keep going forward. I'm just going to keep going forward and going to keep trying to make some progress. But my opponent thinks for a little bit and takes the pawn. And now, with 26 seconds on the clock, I can take a free bishop. I can take a free bishop. Because after pawn takes bishop, pawn takes rook, there's a back rank checkmate against my opponent, and black is winning. Black is just up in exchange here. Black's just up in exchange. So with 26 seconds on my clock, I actually managed to miss the move entirely, and I play rook to d6. Very, very strong move. And it's back to +5. I spent a second on that move, and I immediately like cursed myself for missing this. But it's okay. My opponent goes back to e3 now. Now he sees it. I go pawn to e4, and my opponent goes pawn to c4, and it's still just +5 position. I have 20 seconds on the clock versus 50 seconds on the clock, and it's just not gonna happen. If I go with this move, which seems natural, I immediately get skewered. It's just not gonna happen. I'm kind of allowing myself to admit defeat at this point, but I'm going to keep playing on king to h7, king to g1. I'm playing every move in like a second. Rook c7. I'm down under 20 seconds. Bishop d4, rook e7, just doing normal things. I don't know why I played this move. Like I said this. Maybe I just missed it. Maybe I just missed it during the game. I guess I am playing pretty quickly. Rook c7, bishop to d4, rook back to e7. My opponent goes king f1. I go pawn to e3. Trying to make some progress with my pawn here. Rook f3, e2 check, making issues for my opponent, making him think for a little bit. And now I'm actually gaining a little bit of hope, because my opponent here is down to 34 seconds on the clock versus 16, and I'm not the slowest player in the world. Like, I know what I'm doing in a time scramble. So I'm allowing myself a little bit of hope. I'm allowing myself a little bit of hope, trying to make it work. My opponent goes king to e1 after 3 seconds of thought, which is a long time in these scrambles. Rook dd7, rook f2, rook to e4, just putting issues for my opponent. Bishop takes b6 and rook to b7, forcing my opponent to find some clutch moves. You can't take this because the bishop behind it is hanging. My opponent goes pawn to c5, and now black is up on time, and I'm sure you see where this video is going to end, because after rook to b4, bishop to c2, 5 seconds of thought. You cannot spend this much time in a scramble like this. You are simply going to lose. I go rook to b2. My opponent takes the pawn. He has 3 seconds on his clock. I just decide, okay, you know what I'm going to do? Let's end the game style. My opponent is probably unable to react to anything at this point. Let's just sack the rook. And rook 2 takes b6. My opponent runs out of time, and black wins the game, which is pretty nice. This isn't my first win ever against a Grandmaster. I did beat a Grandmaster in Blitz once, but it was a Blitz game. It really wasn't that impressive. I didn't really enjoy the game, so I thought this was a much better way for me to get a dub. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Always found this entertaining, instructive, all the above. If you did, remember to like, subscribe. Do all the normal things YouTubers tell you to do. And yeah, that's it. Good evening and good night.